Hi everyone, my name is Lorena. I'm a spiritual life coach and a breathwork teacher, and I'm primarily focused on Neville Goddard's teachings. And I'm here to help you shift your state of being and recreate your reality. If you're interested in one-on-one coaching or you would like to book breathwork with me, you can check out information for either of those in the description box below. And if you like this video and you maybe want weekly videos with me, please subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you. And now let's get into this week's topic, which is all about persistence and what persistence is, how to persist in a new assumption so you can recreate your reality. What the law of assumption even is, we'll go into the basics of that as well, and what some common misconceptions are when it comes to persistence and how you can make it really a lot easier for yourself. So before we get into the idea of persistence and how you actually persist in an assumption and create a new assumption and a new reality for yourself, let's talk about the law of assumption and where this sentiment of persistence comes from. It comes from Neville Goddard, and specifically there's a quote that he used, which is, "An assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact." The law of assumption and this particular statement is based on the idea that whatever you assume to be true will be made manifest in your world, in your reality, simply because you believe it to be true. To put it really simply, if you don't let anything else into your consciousness, and if it's because of that not part of your reality, if you don't believe any other option is possible, if you don't have any alternative or plan B, then it has no choice but to unfold. And sometimes this can sound like it's a bit out there, but it's purely based on the premise that reality is based on perception. So if something is so far out of your consciousness that it can't be true for you at all, if you don't believe it under any circumstances, it cannot happen because you can't perceive it. In fact, you wouldn't even notice it happening if it did. So let's say your partner was cheating on you, but you would have full trust and full faith in your relationship and full trust in your partner. You probably won't notice that they are cheating regardless of how obvious they are. Likewise, the other way around. If you have a partner who you can trust fully and who is completely loyal, but you continuously believe that they are lying to you, that they are cheating, maybe because it's based on experiences you have made in the past with this person or other people, or if you maybe on some level don't feel worthy of them and for some reason you are mistrusting, then you will subconsciously find more and more reasons not to trust them, because on a deeper level you are looking for reasons not to trust them because it's the assumption that you already have. And what can then happen is that there will actually be reasons for you to not trust them because your behavior will change, your thoughts will change, your feelings will change according to this assumption and according to this state of being that you're embodying in this moment. Let's say if you were to then start controlling them and checking up on them constantly, that would make them uncomfortable and they may actually do something that they otherwise would not have done. Now, I want to put a disclaimer here. Not every situation is the same. So if you have been cheated on, I'm not saying this was your fault or you did exactly this. This is just an example of what could unfold based on an assumption that initially wasn't true. To illustrate this a bit further, I would like to share a personal success story of something that I manifested through the law of assumption. This is one of those manifestation successes where I persisted in an assumption until it hardened into fact. I wanted to work for a very specific company in a very specific position. This was my dream company, and I would walk past their office and I would know this is the company I want to work for. And I ended up applying for a position there, for the position I wanted, and I actually got rejected. And I was devastated. But nonetheless, every day I would walk past the office and I would know this is where I'm going to be working. I just have to work there. This is the job that is made for me. I just know. And I would imagine myself, visualize myself sitting in this office, looking outside. This was easy for me to do as well because this particular company had glass walls, so I actually knew what the interior looked like. But I would imagine myself sitting there and looking outside and working there, and it would feel real. Although I had been rejected, I never gave up on that dream. I knew this position at this company was mine to have. However, although I persisted in that dream, I didn't sit around and wait for things to change. I was initially devastated when I had received the rejection, but I also didn't feel sorry for myself for not getting the job. And I didn't make it mean that I would give up. In fact, in the meantime, I actually ended up taking another job, and I even ended up moving to another city. So I continued living my life, but I never truly let this dream or this desire go. And I knew deep in my heart, deep in my soul, this was mine. Lo and behold, a couple of years later, someone contacted me from exactly this company. And this was a person that I had met years before. And they reached out to me and said, we have this position, which was the exact position that I had initially applied for, just with better pay. You would be perfect for it. So I ended up applying again. And this time the application process was so smooth. It was actually quite challenging. There were like 5 interview stages or something, but I got through them and I got accepted, and I got exactly the position I wanted with more pay than I had bargained for at exactly the company I wanted to work at, with just a little bit of delay, but it had unfolded so naturally. I hadn't even looked for that position again. Somebody reached out to me. So it was a beautiful example of a bridge of incidents that just unfolded simply because I never gave up. So the reason I wanted to share this personal success story is because I want to illustrate how easy it can be and how smooth it can be. Yes, it took some time, it took a few years, but bear in mind, I left the city in between, so I wasn't exactly looking to get that position right away. I just knew in the depths of my soul this would happen and this was mine, but I didn't need it to happen immediately. I wasn't waiting around. I wasn't putting my life on hold. It was just the most natural unfolding, and it happened in the perfect way, and for me personally, at the perfect time. To be honest, I actually needed the time in between to make other experiences, to feel confident, and to be in the right stage of my life to actually accept that position. So now that we have this example, let me tell you how you can persist and how you can make it really easy for yourself. So obviously, persistence comes into play here because when you have an assumption that something is the way it is not currently in your physical surroundings, like it was for me in that job, initially it's going to feel fake because the physical facts tell you something else. But if you've watched my video on how to live in the end, and if you haven't, I highly suggest you check it out after this one. I'm going to link it below. Then you know that it's not about denial. You know, I didn't sit there and I didn't try and convince myself that I was already sitting in the office. I was just tapping into the feeling of how it would feel, and I knew it was done. But I didn't pretend things weren't the way they physically were. I didn't stop going to my old job. In that time period when things aren't yet the way you want them to be, that's where persistence really comes into play. And this time period is actually when it really counts, because that's the time when people often get swayed by their physical circumstances. So they will look at their circumstances and they will see it's not the way they assumed it to be, and then they make that mean that they are either doing something wrong, or that the law isn't working, or that it will never happen, or that their specific desire is impossible, or they start beating themselves up and then they give up, or they keep going in circles. But this is because instead of persisting, instead of trusting, instead of knowing it is done, they are waiting around for things to change and they stop living their life. So persistence essentially is about choosing to see your preference even when you don't have any external proof. It is about trusting your desire, because when I have a desire, I trust that it's here for a reason, and I make that mean that it is done. And I don't worry about at what point it will unfold or what steps need to happen in between. I just trust the desire itself. So when I trust my desire, and I accept it, and I know that it's done. I don't only believe it's possible, I know it's done, I know it's mine to have and experience. And then let's say something completely opposite happens, or nothing happens for a really long time, or I only get like what some people call a partial manifestation, an in-between stepping stone. Then I personally just see it as a bit of an opportunity. I see it as a test in persistence. And when I say this, I don't mean there is something outside of you testing you, but I see it as an opportunity to ask myself, how much do I really want this? Do I want this enough to persist despite the circumstances? Or am I actually more comfortable in the reality that I'm currently in? And honestly, sometimes the latter is true. Sometimes we need to be honest with ourselves and admit that we're not yet ready to shift into the reality that we want to experience. We're actually quite comfortable where we are. But other times, this test in persistence is my indication to go, no, what I'm seeing right here around me physically is not what I want. I want what I want, so I'm choosing to persist in only that. Let's talk about some common misconceptions when it comes to persistence. I think this is where people get tripped up and why people start waiting for something to change instead of assuming it's done. Often when people hear the word persistence, they think that means that they need to constantly remind themselves of the new reality, or recite affirmations all day, or imagine every night, visualize every night without fail. And if they were not to do that, then they're not fully persisting. If they are living their life and accepting their circumstances as they are not persisting. But it's so much simpler than that. There is honestly no pressure. It is a simple knowing and a trusting that because you want it, it's going to happen. It is a conscious decision to perceive even the unloveliest circumstances as something that is serving you, as an opportunity rather than an obstacle. It's a choice to trust your desires as a promise. It's a decision to not accept the current circumstances as the final outcome. And at the same time, you're not fighting, rejecting, or denying your current reality. You're not pretending that what you're currently living and seeing and experiencing isn't real, because there is no need to do that because you're already trusting. So it's not about ignoring your current circumstances. See, I still went to work in this other place, right? I didn't stop going. I didn't walk into the wrong office. I still even accepted my rejection email. I also allowed myself to be sad about it. But I also did not allow myself to give up. I did not accept it as the final outcome. I did not see it as the end, and I did not see it as failure. I still used my imagination and visualized myself being in this office, but I didn't do so with force. I wasn't waiting around. I didn't beat myself up. I still lived and enjoyed my life. I didn't say a million affirmations every day. I just held the vision for what I wanted to experience, even when my circumstances showed me something different. Trust your desire. Trust your yearning. Choose to believe that it is here for a reason. You don't need to force yourself to do techniques. That's not what persistence is. You don't need to convince yourself that it's already here right now. That's also not what persistence is. You don't need to deny or reject what's happening around you. That's also not what persistence is. It's about consciously choosing to perceive your preference. This is what persistence really means. If you have any questions on persistence, if anything is unclear, please let me know and I'll be happy to answer. Also leave me a comment below with new video suggestions. I always want to follow the things that you want to see and hear and learn. And next week, we're talking about allowing and receiving and making this process really easy. Lots of love, and I'll see you next time.